What's up? My name is Corey Latte, and this is how I moved out of my parents' place for the first time. I wanted to start this YouTube channel to document my self-development and self-improvement process, and I feel like one of the biggest components of that was when I actually moved out. It's about to approach a year. So I guess a little bit of background about where I was at in life. I graduated in the spring of 2020 during COVID, so like once COVID started. So I originally had plans to be like a personal trainer coming out of college and mixing my degree of psychology with personal training and developing a career from that. And COVID happened, so all the gyms were closed and I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. Combined with a bunch of family health situations, I kind of just got lost of what I was doing in life and was getting like really depressed back and forth for like a while. Ended up getting a part-time job at Under Armour, and I was there for like a year and a half before I started really trying to get myself together and getting like a professional position. So in July of last year, 2022, I got my first professional position, and after being in that position for about 6 months, I decided to move out of my family house. So I always knew that I wanted to move out and I wanted to have my own space specifically. So like I said, about 6 months into my professional position, I had saved a decent amount where I could start thinking about it. And the actual thing that actually made me want to start thinking about moving out was I was dating this girl and she had her own apartment, and she had told me like how much the rent cost, and I was like, I feel like I could do that right now. Like I probably could have moved out like a lot before, but I kept having these excuses and these regarding my fears about if I would be able to sustain myself, so I wouldn't have to move back in. And I realized, like I said, it was all like just an excuse for me to not start, because I wasn't even looking. I was just saying, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. But I was dating this girl and I was like, oh, she's like doing well for herself, and I feel like it was the first time I really saw that I could do it, and she lived on her own, so I was like, that's kind of like where I want to be with that. So yeah, the first thing I have on my list is to talk about money. So by the time I decided to move out, I only had about $5,000 in my savings account, which is not a lot. A lot of people would say to have about 3 to 6 months expenses and like emergency funds, so you have like a cushion before you decide to move out. And I was just kind of like, I'm trying to get out of here. So I had about $5K in savings and took the risk and the leap on myself, and it was well worth it for me in my situation. Like I said, I already had a professional W-2 whatever job, and I was getting another job at a part-time so I could make more money. I was pretty stressed about money, but I was still willing to take the risk on myself. After like really looking at the money and like thinking like, okay, I'm gonna be able to do this, and developing that inner confidence, I started to have a lot of more mindset thoughts. So I was trying to realize why I was trying to move. I was like very unhappy in my family situation because it's just a lot of different personalities that weren't aligning with like how I wanted to be developing myself. And I'm like a sponge for like emotions and stuff, and taking in everybody's energy in my family. Like I love my family to death, but I in the end felt like our relationships would even be better once I moved out, which has been like greatly true. Like I definitely believe space like helps you develop those relationships. So that was a fear with moving out. Like I felt like I was abandoning my family, and that was overriding my desire to want to do something like for myself. And like I said, a year later, like it has been like the best decision that I've ever made for our relationships, and like again for my inner like well-being. Another thing to think about when you're trying to develop the mindset and the confidence to move out is that action comes before motivation sometimes. So sometimes you just have to do things that are going to be good for you in order for you to get the motivation, because otherwise your fears or your doubts are going to like get in your way. So if you need to wiggle around or maneuver with the rent, you might have to consider doing that if you're really serious about moving out and getting out of your parents' place. I realized that a lot of places were utilities included, which was very beneficial to me, because I was thinking like, okay, my rent should be this much, so my utilities could be this much. And with rent and utilities included, that allowed me to mentally kind of bring up the rent and kind of justify me picking like one place over the other. I'm kind of rambling on a bit, but other things to consider when you're actually like scheduling appointments to go, toward the places, and always toward the places. I didn't have a bad experience But I've heard horror stories of people like not actually touring places before they move in, like especially if it's local. I feel like even if it's out of state, like try and find out what you're actually getting yourself into, and try and find the actual unit that you're going to move into. That was really important for me. You're going to want to find what the earliest move-in date is and the latest move-in date is. You want to know what kind of fees or anything that you might have to pay up front. So for example, I needed a place with parking, and so parking is kind of like not included in my rent, but I pay it like in the same way. You want to know what kind of payments that they take, so I use a rental portal. For a while I was using like money orders. You go to Safeway, pay like $1 or something, and you get money orders that you can give them, and you don't have to pay processing fees. But you also don't have to pay processing fees usually if you use if you put in your bank information, as opposed to if you use a credit card, you're gonna have to pay a fee. So you want to factor in all of that when you're thinking about like what your monthly costs are going to look like. And then once you find a place that you're like relatively comfortable, you figure out what you could compromise on. So for example, I really wanted an in-unit washer and dryer, but I live in Washington DC, so I wasn't finna get that for under $1,500. Like that just wasn't about to work. So I ended up compromising of having a laundry unit in the basement, and that is actually a lot better for me because I could wash like 4 loads of clothes in 2 hours. Like I would just go down there, put everything in, and the process will be over like pretty quickly, as opposed to having to wash like all day. So I don't know, I see it as a plus. So you figure out what you're willing to compromise on, what you're not willing to compromise on, and then you go searching for places. Now what happened with me is I found a place that I loved so much, but it was probably like $300 or $400 a month more expensive than the place I'm living in now, which was already out of my means even with me getting my other job. So what I did was, I really had to say, Corey, like this place that you really want, it doesn't even have an in-unit washer and dryer, so go for the cheaper option. And I say that because I'm more of like a minimalist, and I recommend, like, I don't know, it's kind of like the come up, like starting from the bottom is like not a bad idea at all. And if you don't, I'm also a believer, if you don't like something, try it out and just never do it again. So I ended up not regretting the place I live in, but if I didn't like it, like I could always leave in a year. A year is really not that long. Like it's not a short amount of time, but it's not that long when you're thinking about something like housing. You have to really step into something to understand what you don't and don't like. Because like I said, we tend to think that we know what we like and don't like. And to a certain extent that could be true, but you also need to surprise yourself once you're actually in the situation. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, I kind of already kind of hit on it. So you've thought about like, okay, what is my current money situation like and what can I afford? So then you go into actually thinking about like developing the why I haven't moved out yet and getting like your mindset together to help you build the confidence. You're saying, okay, I could probably afford something like this. I'm starting to get excited by starting to buy like little supplies for my new apartment, and now I'm going to actually go schedule appointments, go look at the places that I like, figure out what I am not willing to negotiate on, figure out what are my must-haves, and I'm going to find like what I'm comfortable with. You're going to pick like 2 places that you really like, and I'm not telling you to do this, but what I did, pick 2 places I really like, and I studied them like so much, and I would see because rental properties, like rental prices go up and down, and the rent that you end up paying, for me at least, was based on like when I actually applied. So I would be checking the website like once or twice a day after I kind of decided the places that I liked the most, and one day the rent dropped, like had to be like $200, and I ended up paying $1,263 for rent and utilities included for the current studio that I am at. And that's when I was just like, let me just take the leap. Like I just saw a chance and I took it. It wasn't like something carefully thought out, like, oh, I'm gonna move on this day. It was like, okay, I could probably afford something like this, but let me kind of see if something's better. And then the situation got better, and then I moved out. So yeah, think about your current money situation. Think about the mindset that you're gonna have to, and help yourself to build the confidence to move out. Actually go take actions towards seeing the places that you might want to move to, and then really like talk to yourself and like think, is this feasible? And most of the times I feel like the answer is probably yes, this is feasible. Like you're probably capable of a lot more than you think of yourself. Try and figure out like what kind of fears are getting in your way. Say like, for me it was like not having a safety cushion. Like I said, only moved out, starting out with the savings of $5,000, and had to pay first month's rent, $500 security deposit. I didn't have to pay last month's rent, so I got kind of lucky on that. But try and see, like, after I moved in, I only had like $2 2K in savings probably. What, first month's rent and security deposit was probably like 2K, and then getting supplies and moving expenses. I'm a minimalist, so I really was just like trying to get the bare minimum. I still don't have a bed frame. I have my little futon now, but it took me like 6 months before I started getting actual furniture like that. So, you know, figure out what you're willing to compromise on, and like really try to understand like why you want to and why you need to move out, and let that be like your guiding force. If this is unfeasible and this is realistic for you, then wait like 6 months. You don't want to rush into the wrong place. I do feel like I feel like a lot of my blessing has been God and luck because I have a great place that's clean. The biggest thing that needed was it to be clean, and for it to be kind of convenient for me to go to work. So I take the bus and the public transportation to work, so I don't really drive my car a whole bunch, and I save money because of that. So maybe I'll get into other types of expenses and stuff in another video. But so yeah, that's how I developed the confidence to move out of my family house, and I'm living on my own now, and it's like the best thing. It was a struggle, like working the 2 jobs for the period of time, but it definitely helped me be able to save. That's another thing. I'll talk about finances specifically, I guess, in its own other thing, but you want to be able to save. Like, even if you don't have the cushion, you want to be able to develop the cushion. So, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of other topics I could get into regarding that, but yeah, this is like my first sit down and talk YouTube video in a while, and yeah, I hope you enjoy. Hope this gives you the motivation to take a chance on yourself and start developing some sort of independence, because I do feel like you learning how to take care of yourself is very important when it comes to reaching your goals and stuff. So hope you enjoyed, and yeah, let me know what other kind of videos maybe I should talk about. I think I'm going to talk about something to do with finance next. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a great day.